Hi guys, so I'm here today to do an on my shelf video. If you haven't seen any of these before, essentially you ask for people to send you numbers, one referring to a shelf on your bookcases and the other referring to a book on that shelf. And you pick out the books according to the numbers people send you and you talk about them. And it's just a way to kind of get a random selection of books in a video, maybe end up talking about books you haven't talked about much in your channel. And it's just a really fun idea for a video. I really like it. I've done it a couple of times before and I really enjoy watching other people's on my shelf videos. So I asked my booktube friends on Voxer for some numbers. From those numbers I have 4 books because I didn't want this video to be terribly long, and I'll link the channels to the lovely women who sent me numbers in the description box down below. So firstly, Holly over at Library at the Edge of the World sent me the numbers 4 and 16. Now number 4 was the shelf with all of my Oxford World Classics on it. So I have here Achilles, Tatius, Leucippe and Cleitophon. Now this is one of my all-time favourite pieces of ancient literature and also one of my all-time favourite books. Not necessarily one of my favourite books because it's the best book I've ever read or it's the best book that's ever been written, but it holds a special place in my heart and I really enjoy it. I've read it about 3 times now. But what is it? So this book is an ancient Greek novel. I did a whole video on the ancient Greek novel genre, so I'll link that down below in case you're curious, because I know that sounds a little bit odd. There was actually a trend that began in the late Hellenistic period to write prose fiction, and we have 5 of those novels surviving from the late Hellenistic period into the Roman Empire, and they all have a romantic theme. They are quite often called the Greek romances because they always follow a couple and the trials and tribulations of that couple getting together. Of the 5, Leucippe and Cleitophon is tied top place for my favourite. I think Daphnis and Chloe, which I've talked about before on my channel, stands out as the best of the ones that have survived, but the reason I love this is because how funny it is. Because it reads very much as a parody of the genre. It takes the mickey out of the traditional images of love elegy and the romance genre it fits into. It's really funny and you know what a parody is, so I really like this book for that reason. I think it's such good fun to read, and I actually wrote my undergrad dissertation on this book alongside Daphnis and Chloe and Jason and the Golden Fleece. So very special place in my heart. Love this book. Vanessa over at Chbosky sent me my next set of numbers, which are 4 and 12. So another Oxford World Classic came up, funnily enough, and this is one I've actually talked about recently because it is a new addition to my collection, and it is Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own and the 3 Guineas. And the reason I requested this from the publisher recently is because we're going to be reading it as part of the book club I started here on BookTube, the Feminist Orchestra, which is a feminist book group, and this is the book we'll be reading in April, so next month, and it's a collection of 2 narrative style essays. I really like this bind up edition because it includes both the books. So A Room of One's Own is the one we're reading for the book club, and it's about women in fiction and women authors and how they're represented. It's a classic. And also the 3 Guineas, which my mum was really pushing me to read anyway, which is also a political essay, and Virginia Woolf's own stance on war as she's a pacifist, and she talks about her own politics in this essay. So I'm really excited for this. I feel like Virginia Woolf's going to be one of my new favourite women once I read this because I haven't read any of her works so far. I then received the numbers 10 and 3 from my friend Brittany over at Under the Radar Books, and this took me to some of my read general fiction, and that was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I read this almost 2 years ago now. I definitely talked about it on my channel at the time. This is the first and only Donna Tartt book I've read. I really enjoyed this book. It started off a lot higher in my ratings. I thought it was going to be a 5-star book, but it ended up a 4-star book because it kind of slowed down and there was this lull, kind of not quite in the middle, but maybe the 3rd quarter of it kind of dipped in interest for me, but the rest of it was so standout, and I think Donna Tartt's writing was so magnificent that this book still holds a really special place in my heart. My friend David recommended it to me because he absolutely loved it, and he kept telling me how I must read it because it's about our lives, because it's about a group of university college students in America who study classics, and David and I were studying classics at university together. That is where the similarity stops. My friends were not like these people. There is murder amongst a pile of other really horrible things in this book, but it was really enjoyable. That added element of them being classic students and so much of it being a reference to antiquity and classics made it all the more enjoyable for me, but it was also a really intriguing plot. It was kind of about the really disturbing relationship between all of these friends and some of the horrible things that happened in their group, and it also kind of dealt with class. I would highly recommend it. And last but not least were the numbers 14 and 4 from Alicia over at Ex Libris, and that was my graphic novel shelf, and that pulled out Che Guevara, a manga biography. This is published by Penguin and is, as it says, a kind of manga biography. It's not so traditional manga that you read it from the back. It's kind of been westernized in that fashion, but it is a black and white graphic novel in a Japanese style. It follows the life of the political activist and historical figure Che Guevara. Now, I knew who Che Guevara was before reading this book, but I hadn't seen the film, The Motorcycle Diaries, and I hadn't really ever read about him in depth. So this was a really excellent book as a kind of like, here's what his life was about. Obviously it's not incredibly in depth, it's not got like any political analysis in it, but it is a really good basic biography of the figure. It makes it really intriguing and interesting, it gives it a narrative structure, and it really does introduce you to the figure and some interesting facts I didn't know about Che Guevara at all before reading this book. So I think this was amazing fun. I think it was such a good way to read about a historical figure. It is one of my favourite genres of graphic novel, the non-fiction graphic novel or the biography graphic novel. I think it's one of the best ideas. I think it makes history and non-fiction topics really accessible and interesting, and is a good place to start. And I have plans for an entire video about non-fiction graphic novels. I know there are actually maybe 1 or 2 other books in this series by Penguin. I don't know if it was a very big series, but I know there's one for Gandhi, so I may have to look into that at some point. So those were all the books I had to show you in this video. I hope you enjoyed this sort of mishmash of different things. If you want to do this tag, I'll give you a set of numbers 3 and 15. I know Alicia over at Ex Libris did one of these recently and she also provided a set of numbers, so there you have 2 if you go over and check her video out. And until next time guys, happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye! But there's something really powerful to actively calling yourself a feminist, and that's something this book reminded me of. Calling yourself a feminist is actively acknowledging the inequality in society, and it's making a statement to say, I want better than this, I want to do better than this, and I want to be a part of something that helps make things better than this.